Hello, back on track with Masquerade, and we're done. Finished. The song is finished. I'm just about to upload the final version today, and I'm really pleased with it. I think the polishing that I talked about in the last episode has gone really well. The vocals have been cleaned and tidied and processed and sparkling. All the drums have obviously been turned into WAVs to reduce some part of the CPU burden, but it's still, you can't see actually, it's behind my colossal head, but yeah, CPU is stressed. Anyway, let's listen to the song and then we can see what we've done. Particularly like the where the guitars have finally found their place. There's not been that much kind of EQing in terms of kind of sculpting out ranges. There's bit of this kind of thing going on. So for each of the individual sounds, so this one, for instance, is this fella. So there's not an enormous difference, but it is enough to be significant. Each of them is finding its place. That's just a brighter, cleaner sound. A little bit of this 1K sculpted out. Had a bit of a play with the solo sound at the end. Got it sounding a little bit more to my taste. This is becoming my go-to chorus effect out of Amplitude. It's very nice. I don't actually know what it's emulated off. I should find out. If anyone knows, shout up. And the amp, I think, is a Fender. It's almost certain to be. It's just my go-to amp, the Fender Twin. Love it. Absolutely brilliant. Lovely sound. Drums have all been turned into WAVs and cleaned and obviously tidied and whatnot. The processing that I've done on the drums themselves was something that I've not really focused that much on before. Actually, you know, individually picking out sounds, and you can't do it like this. I didn't process the kick in isolation like this, but listening to it in the context of the song. And what I'm tending to do when I'm getting to the mixing stage now is choosing different sections of the song to play against each other. So I'll mix the drums internally and get them sounding good as they are, and then I'll bring the bass in. And how do they sound with the bass, and like mix to that. And then I might take the bass out and bring the guitars in and see what they sound like together, and then all three together. So I'm doing this kind of Cartesian product thing where I try mixing and matching different elements of the song together, and at various points, it's really important to say, during this kind of patchwork approach to sound comparison, also having regular moments when I do listen to the entire song. I have to try and, you've got to keep that holistic sense of what the whole thing sounds like. But I'm finding it really interesting to break sounds down into like partnerships, individual partnerships, and also never forgetting to listen to every single sound completely on its own for the entire length of the song, because you never know what artifacts you're going to come across that you've just accidentally left there because it's, you know, buried in the rest of the song, and you might find that, oh, that's too ugly to stay. Now, I'm also trying to train myself not to be too overbearing with those decisions and making sure that everything is always perfect, because it's kind of okay to hide a few, you know, brush a few things under the carpet, but like sonic mistakes, like forgetting to fade samples out properly and having, you know, clicks, or that's just unacceptable. So when I come to mix the drums, I'll listen to them as a unit, as an entire drum unit, and listen to them like this. And this is primarily where I'll do the majority of my effect-based processing on them. Pretty simple for the kick, you know, just taking out the very low lows. This may be the first time I've ever used a gate on a song. I know, please don't shout, but it's just one of those things. It's one of those things. I'm just learning all of this stuff as I go and turning it on, and at first thinking, ooh, that's horrible, that's like savagely cutting the sound out, but then starting to mess with the controls to the point where, oh right, that's what it does. The reason why you're hearing snare is because I've recorded these out of BFD, and I've left the lots of the settings in BFD have like bleed values to make that sense of kind of the holistic drum kit kind of concept, and I've left it in. I thought, well, there's no point stripping all of that out and going down to absolutely pure sound. Although, to be absolutely honest with you, now listening back to it, the snare is like too dominant, but in the context of the song it sounds fine, so I've left it there. So this has come out of BFD, and there is bleed in the settings of the preset I used. So that's why we're hearing snare. That's bloody radical. That is just a vastly improved kick sound. So yeah, gating is definitely probably the big gain out of this song. There's usually something in each song that I write. There's usually something I stumble across and think, right, need to add that to the toolbox now. Remember not to forget. Try gating on your various drum sounds and see where it sounds good. I'm not going to say I'm going to savagely add it to everything from this point onwards, but it's now a new tool in my toolbox that I didn't have previously. Perfectly happy to admit when I'm ignorant, and this was definitely one of those situations. So yeah, after I've done just the drums and got them sorted, then I'll bring the bass in and listen to those two together. How does that sound? Bass is pretty sparse at this point in the song. The typical split thing that I've got. Hear the delay? That's Ozone. Speaking of which, let's have a look. I pretty much always at least pay attention to, observe what tonal balance is telling me about my audio mix. Pretty well behaved curve. Everything is staying inside the lines that I quite like this bass heavy setting, so I'm tending to work to that for the most part these days, but I'm not using this as an instructive change this because tonal balance control says it's wrong, but I will use it in an advisory capacity. If I've got some kind of big spike at 350, I'll make some attempts to find bits of the song that are too heavy in those kind of frequencies and see what I can do to correct it. So definitely an instructive tool. Ozone itself, left to the maximizer fairly well alone, actually. Not done a lot with it. Always do the learn threshold thing at the end of the song. Turn it on, play the song, set your master output bus to 0. That's something I learned in a fairly recent episode of one of the other songs that I've recently produced. Make sure you've got your output bus at 0, otherwise what's the point in setting a limiter? Idiot. Just a little bit of enhanced width in basically everything that's not the bass, because you don't really want bass to be stereo, or certainly not accentuated. But for the upper frequencies, just wind it out a little bit. It's kind of fun watching your sound in a stereo field.
Out as one in
So yeah, I'll listen to the song and like watch it and see how wide the stereo field is. And similarly with the low end focus, I brought it in just for a tiny little bit of extra punch in the bass, just turn the contrast up a little bit, and it just separates the bass and the kick nicely. So I'm using a lot of these automated tools, really noddy fashion. As soon as I find something that seems to have improved it a little bit, then I'm stopping there before I get too carried away and just end up completely ruining the sound. I'm finding that Ozone is kind of dark and wondrous magic, and the more I fiddle with it, the more I tend to break what's there. Just a happy time when you put that on right at the very end, when I've done everything else and I've got the sound the way I want it to be in terms of the individual instruments. Then bring Ozone in, and just that final polishing process just seems to take it to the next level. Hope you enjoyed the song, and hope you enjoyed watching this video series. And if you click subscribe and hit notifications, then you'll find out when I release content for my other songs and the other tutorial videos that I make. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.